The college class. So Andrew went to college. I did not.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never heard of a college class where they teach you about ways to dress in like, after you're trying to get a job and so forth. So there was a class. What was the class? Or was this like a part of
Yeah, it wasn't
job
necessarily
prep?
like a class that was specifically dedicated to that. It was more
Sure.
so of like, preparation classes or
I see.
classes where maybe intro to such and such, intro to business or intro to nursing or whatever your
Okay.
field is. They're teaching you about the social norms of what
Okay.
it means to be in that field.
Yes.
And so, like, my team building activities are we're going to the club
Yeah.
because that's what we like to do, right? I mean, I'm 34. Majority of my team is under 40. During that age, we like to go to bars. We like karaoke. We do those things. In corporate America, I had to go learn how to play golf.
Yeah. Did you? Golf is awful.
I mean, it serves its purpose. It's kind of boring and long, but
Yeah, it's very boring. Those are that type of team building activity sounds great. I've got a few things here I don't want to forget to ask you. First of all, where do you like to go in Nashville? To bars or clubs?
So I like to go to Minerva Lounge, which is one of my classmates. He owns that.
Okay.
I go to the Weekend.
Okay.
I'm really like unapologetically black, so I stick to the black owned stuff.
Okay.
But sometimes I'll go to different things. Like I used to go to Basement East sometimes when they would have like hip hop sets. I like those.
Yeah.
I like going to reggae clubs.
Okay.
And there's this little lounge around the corner, Flamingo Lounge.
Yeah, it's right
I
down
like
the
that
road.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been there a few times.
And I like PH craft cocktails too.
Is that? It's right up here in Wedgwood, Houston, isn't it? Okay, I've not been there yet. Back to the class. The reason I was sort of interested in that is I guess I always thought the way that a lot of people dress in corporate America was sort of self-perpetuated in that like everyone does it, and so the newcomers realize everyone else is doing it. That's how I'm going to dress too. We recently had Shelby Stevens, who was a reporter for WSMV Channel 4 Nashville, and she just moved to Hawaii like a week ago. And so she's obviously not a reporter here anymore. But she was, I asked her why reporters talk the way they do, because reporters tend to be like, they're just doing their thing and then back to you, Bob. Like they all have this kind of very matter of fact, sort of a deeper voice, sort of like the end of their sentences really tailed down, and I just figured that was like a training that she went through at some point, and it wasn't. There's no training for like talking like that as a reporter. I just figured that like the news apparatus had figured out that if you talk a certain way in a certain tone of voice and end your sentences, sort of very matter-of-factly, that tends to like be received better by the audience, and then they're teaching it and everything. And no, it's not like that at all. No one's ever taught her to teach like that. Matter of fact, now they're saying try as much as possible to speak naturally and not have like a reporter voice. And that was just something where she wanted to be a reporter from a young age. So all the reporters that she paid attention to, they all spoke that way. And as she went through college and got her job, like that's what she did. It was like self-perpetuated. It wasn't necessarily taught. The coming back to, all right, the Equity Alliance. All right, you gave us the elevator pitch, but like what is you guys are doing a lot of different things. I know you're not just in Nashville now, you're kind of Tennessee statewide.
Yeah,
but
we're
it's
statewide.
Focused on Tennessee, right? It's Tennessee specific.
Yeah, so right now we're Tennessee specific, but eventually we would like to grow to regional to be a southern based organization, but right now we're specifically focused on Tennessee. It's a lot of ground to cover here.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you guys are ambitious. So, all right. So you kind of gave us the elevator pitch, but you're doing a bunch of different things. But like, what do you think is like one of the more important things that you guys are doing, as that really is like moving the needle? Is it getting people out to vote? Is it that, or is there other things?
People ask me that all the time, and I always say, like, voting is one tool in our toolbox. Like, do I think that voting is going to be the end all be all that's going to save or liberate the Black and brown community? Absolutely not. I think that voting, money, power, access, influence, all those things that most, and I just say this typically, white men use to kind of bend the spectrum to make it fit what they want are all tools that we can use for liberation.
Yeah.
But the biggest and the most important thing that we do is actually the simplest thing, and that's, organizing people.
Yep.
Because the more people we organize, the more people we communicate with, the more people we can heal, the more people we can begin to have relationships with and be in community with, so that when we do need to do some sort of action, we have a community of people who, one, trust us and trust our leadership, but two, are trained, are knowledgeable, and are ready for whatever that action may look like. And so, yes, we do focus a lot on civic engagement because that's one of the most underutilized tools. A lot of times, Tennessee in 2016 was 50th in voter turnout. And like I said, I always tell people this, in the spaces of community resiliency or healing or, overcoming social ills, we treat it like we would treat the common cold. You will hear people talk about criminal justice reform is a big one right now. Everybody's talking about criminal justice reform. You'll hear about housing issues. You'll hear about, violence. You'll hear about issues with education. But what people don't realize is that's just like treating the common cold. You're taking something for a sore throat. You're taking something to suppress your cough. But nobody ever stops to think, if the cold is so common, why do we not have an immunity? Why have we not figured out a vaccination for it? And so we are trying to figure out the vaccination. We're trying to help people develop an immunity for the cold versus treating the symptoms.
Yes. And okay, so what would you say are some of the underlying issues with those things like crime and criminal justice reform, those things? It sounds like you're saying there's something underlying that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is that?
Systemic racism, obviously, white supremacy, systemic racism, anti-Blackness are at the core of a lot of those issues. And they are, those issues and that systemic racism is the thread that has weaved together democracy, if that makes sense. And so for us, how do we begin to, one, figure out how that thread is actually weaved in and then reweave it?
Yeah. That's a very tricky question because, one of the good things is in this last year, spring, summer, a lot of these issues have surfaced in a way that they haven't before or in some time. So it's getting people thinking about, I'm just thinking, I can think of multiple friends, church, that are thinking about these things, that are talking about these things, that in a way that is elevated from, say, last year this time or the year before that. I know that's not the case in all circles, but so like the issues are kind of rising to the surface, but then there's a lot of disagreement, or there's some disagreement about like where the actual issues are. And maybe it's not even disagreement. Maybe it's areas of focus, because some people tend to be more focused on police brutality and others are more focused on criminal justice reform. Others are more focused on like economic opportunities in communities, which is really, and that's it, which is obviously a super critical one. As you're kind of surveying the landscape today, like where do you see like one of the more important things? We could even take Nashville if we want to like hone in on it. Is there police that is, would you say would be one of the bigger issues, or is it our laws and the way they're enforced, or is it blatant racism, however that kind of plays itself out even on a systemic level? Like if you were kind of surveying Nashville, where do you see it here?
Economic opportunities. That's an easy answer for me. I definitely think that the fact that Nashville is, ranked one of the largest, smallest towns, and you have teachers and people that make the city what it is that can't afford to live here, it's crazy. So, I do think that one of the things that COVID revealed to me was that, Black people have always faced a pandemic, and that pandemic is poverty. Yes, poverty and systemic racism and anti-Blackness all go hand in hand, but at the core of what we're experiencing right now is a lack of economic opportunity. You know, people, when you don't have opportunities, when people cannot afford to feed their families, they're going to go out and do what they feel they can do or what they have access to be able to survive. And over time, those survival tactics become a way of life. And I think that is what we're seeing. It's hard to just pick one issue because, like I said, systemic racism and economic opportunities go hand in hand. Even with the Our Fair Share initiative that we launched with the mayor's office, one of the things that we realized is access to government resources and information is something that our communities just don't have. And so when you think about all of the millionaires that are in this city, I'm pretty sure if you pulled their taxes, 98% of them have some sort of government contract. How many of those contracts are going to Black and brown people? How many Black and brown developers are there that are taking advantage of this boom in Nashville? And if there are Black and brown developers, how many of them have the political capital to not be shut out? And so it all kind of goes hand in hand. So I think what society has taught us to do when we think about politics, when we think about everything, is segmented out. Like nobody wants to sit and eat a whole meal. They want to like chew on a little bit here and there. But the reality is it's a family feast. You might eat the chicken and I might eat the green beans. You know what I mean? But together, you can focus on whether it's police brutality and that's your thing, and I'm focused on criminal justice and he's focused on civic engagement. If we're all focused on something different, how we do it doesn't and shouldn't matter. It's the why that matters. Do we have the same mission? And so that's kind of where the alliance piece from Equity Alliance comes in, because we realize no one person can do everything. You know, we have to be like an army of ants.
Yes.
And in order to do that, we have to be in alignment. We have to be in alignment around what the mission is. And the mission is simple liberation. And all of these tools, from protesting to advocacy, to direct service, to the things that you mentioned, all of these tools are going to help us to begin to dismantle the system and reconfigure it in a way that liberates us.
Yes.